Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Baker Leavitt here. Everyone's out of the building. I decided to hijack the Launch Code podcast and reach out to a very special guest that most of you probably know, Ross Patterson.
Yes. How are you, Baker?
I'm excellent, man. How's your wife and the new baby?
They're good. They're good. A lot of sleepless nights, obviously, but everybody's doing good. Takes a village. I've gone the Rocco route, like the Mexican route with it, where all of my family's over every single day, like mine and hers, trying to help out. But so far, so good.
So it's just like a regular, like quinceañeras or something like that. Like you guys,
yeah. It's exactly what's going on.
So the reason I reached out to Ross is, there's a lot of people inside this organization that do a lot of really interesting and fascinating things. And a lot of those interesting and fascinating things that they do are very common to each other, but they're not common to the listeners out there. And Ross has written 3 books now, Ross, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, 3 books, and then screenplay-wise, somewhere above 150.
Okay, so that's, you've chatted about that briefly and mentioned it and stuff, but I wanted to kind of dig into it. And that's one of the things that I'm wanting to do more of with Launch Code is, talk to the people within the organization and, just get to know them and not get to know them, but find out some of the stuff that they do that's very common to them, but not common to everyone else. So today we are going to talk to Ross about writing books and his writing ability and how he got started and what that process is like. Because Ross, you and I both know there's a Navy SEAL downrange right now that wants to write a book. And
that's probably the most common question I get, on all my social media and things like that is, hey, I want to write a book or I want to write a screenplay. I probably get that 40 or 50 times a week.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's start talking about the writing of the books first, because I think everyone listening has read a book. I doubt everyone's read a screenplay. So, Ross, what's the name of your first book?
The first book is called At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed.
And what is that book about, Ross?
It's the first ever romance novel for dudes. And how that one came about is, obviously, I've been in Hollywood for a long time, and my literary agent was always asking me to write a book. The problem is, writing a book is a fucking beast. I mean, it is crazy time consuming, and it takes a long time. So I was always hesitant to it because I've been hired so many times to write screenplays, and screenplays, if you ever get a chance to read one or get a copy of them, are double spaced. It's, the words are bigger. It takes a lot less time, and it takes a lot less time to edit. Whereas a book, you're looking at 300 pages. The spacing is definitely not the same. And anytime you want to make an edit, you've got to go back over 300 pages. So if a character says something on page 28 and then you refer to him on page 228, you got to go back 200 pages and make sure that storyline stays consistent throughout, as well as time periods, character arc, all of that stuff. And it's just every time I write a book, I'm like, man, that's the last one. I can't do this again.
So like if you make one change, it's kind of like the butterfly effect, like it changes everything.
Correct. And it's a bitch editing, because that means you have to go back and reread all of those pages as well, because you never know, let's say a character, take At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed. It was a Western, right? Let's say a character's wearing a pair of cowboy boots and he's got a saddlebag for his horse. Well, something was engraved on that saddlebag. You've got to go back and remember that when you're grabbing that, it's the same saddlebag from 200 pages ago that you know and love. And you kind of have to remind the audience too, in a book, because it's longer and people put books down and then they pick them up at different points. Nobody's sitting down and reading them in a night.
Right.
Very, very rarely.
Yeah. So that At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed, you're very well aware, Ross, that I have taken that book all over the world on my hunting trips. And
Look, I think it's one of the funny, like, even though I wrote it, I know this is going to sound arrogant. I purposely tried to make it like the funniest book ever written. Because I figured if I was going to write a book, I wanted it to be completely different than everything else that's out there. So I appreciate you saying that, because I feel that it is one of those books where you can go back and just reread it. And there's like every other line is a one-liner.
I don't take it to personally read it. I've read it a couple of times. What I do is I take it. So when I hunt in Africa or Utah or Georgia or Texas or Alabama or Idaho with my friends or Oregon, and we're in multiple different stands and whatnot, I will tell them, I'll say, pick a number between 1 and 300. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I text them this. And they'll give me a number, and I will turn to that page and take a picture of that page and text it to them. And their response is always, what the fuck is this? So my favorite page, I think it's like page 179, where it starts out, Charlie, get that goddamn dead leprechaun out of the front yard. It's starting to stink. But they always come back with, what the fuck is this? And then they pick another number. And so I'll literally take pictures of the pages and text it to them. And so they're sitting there and, hunting and whatnot, and they're reading these pages, and they're just like, this is insane. Like, what, they don't even know really how to put into words, like, what, like, how to ask a question as to what it is. They're like, I mean, like, is this like real, or like what's going on? So, no, dude, it's hilarious. I think it's absolutely, so if you haven't read the book, At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed, absolutely buy it and just take it with you and read it, and you will absolutely enjoy it. That's
a great game, by the way.
Oh, dude, it's so
I've
funny.
never heard that. People do send me pictures of individual pages all the time, but that's a great game. And by the way, so the sequel just came out 2 weeks ago. When Darkness Falls, he doesn't catch it. I guarantee you, Baker, you could probably do the same with that as well, because it's pure insanity for 300
So now
pages.
I'll be like, all right, pick book 1 or book 2. And they'll pick a number, and then I'll say, all right, pick a page. But so let's talk about like At Night She Cries. So your first book, how long did that take you to write, Ross?
That took me about that was 60 days to write it front to back without editing. So, you write a first draft, and I want to say it took me about 60 days. I was pretty diligent about it. The way that came about was, again, I had pushed off my agents for so long, saying I didn't have time to write a book. And then my wife got pregnant, and she said, hey, it would be nice if you could spend some time with me and not travel around and make movies just for this time period of our first child. And so I said, okay. So I went to the office every day, and I just, sat down 9 to 5-ish, and I wrote that book in 60 days. I didn't set a time period on myself. That's just how long this particular book took. But I did a lot of research beforehand. So the subject matter is about the gold rush during the 1840s and all that stuff. So I had spent 2 months before reading everything and watching everything I could on the gold rush in the Wild West. And that helped.
So, but 60 days, I mean, for a first book, I mean, that's pretty damn fast, is it not?
It's really fast.
So what would you say the industry average is for like a first book?
A year to 2 years, to be honest with you.
So like a page a day, basically?
Yeah, because, a lot of people just don't have the time to sit down as their 9 to 5 job and do it. And that's why. There's very few of us who are paid authors who could make a living just off of writing books and or screenplays. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are trying to, write a page or two at nights when their kids go to bed, or on the weekends, or, super early in the morning before they go to work. And that's why that time is usually what I tell my friends is, my close friends who say they're interested in it. And I was like, look, expect this to take up the next 2 years of your life if you're serious about it.
Damn, that's a lot of time. So
it is
60 days. You got the book. You turn it over to whom? Where does it go from there?
So that one goes to my literary agent at that point. And that was just to make sure that it was even worth the shit, because I didn't want to spend time on editing a 300 and I think what I turned into him might have been 340 or 350 pages. I didn't want to spend the edit time if it wasn't funny enough or it wasn't good enough or it couldn't sell. What I would tell any author is this, though: when you're getting started or whatever your first book is, make sure your subject matter is saleable. Make sure that it can sell to a wide market. Otherwise, you've essentially just written a book for you and a couple buddies maybe to read, or your parents, and that's not worth the time to me. So with this, At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed, because of the subject matter and with the moniker of the first ever romance novel for dudes, I was aware of what was going on in the marketplace at the time. I was doing press for a film, 50K in a call girl at that point. And every radio station I had gone into to do interviews with was always asking me to read a passage of 50 Shades of Grey out loud. Usually is like Morgan Freeman or St. James Street James or Matthew McConaughey. So I would, but after like the 6th or 7th interview, it stopped being funny to me. And I finally just read 50 Shades of Grey, and it was a piece of shit. But it was, a huge bestseller worldwide and all that other stuff. And again, my wife was pregnant at the time of us doing that press for that movie. So I called my agent and I said, "Hey man, has anybody ever wrote a romance novel for dudes?" And he goes, No, fuck no. And I was like, great. What if I did a comedic version of that? And then we capitalize off of 50 Shades of Grey that's going on now. And we just market it to men, and I make it as disgusting as possible. Can you sell that? And he said to me, yes, that I think I can sell. So even before I started writing it, I got the go ahead from him of, hey, I think this will sell in the marketplace. Go with God and write this book.
So knowing the current state of the market, what people's thoughts were, current events, things like that, you did your research.
I did, yes. And I think that's important no matter what you're writing. Again, screenplay, fucking book, whatever it is that you're writing, make sure that there is an audience for it, and it's not so inclusive that a lot of people aren't going to understand what's going on.
Right.
It's like Navy SEALs and all that stuff. There's a massive interest in that. And like you were saying at the top of the show, there's a lot of Navy SEALs out there. That interest will never go away to, Gen Pop America or civilians like myself who, from the outside world looking in, you view the job as Navy SEAL as like the craziest job in the world. You're the biggest badass on the planet. There's always going to be a market for that. Now, granted, once you do write that book, there's got to be some amazing SEAL stories in there that you've, missions or things that you did. Because if, there is a lot of guys who we've chatted with on Drinkin Bros podcast or just, at all the events we go to who were like, I'm a Navy SEAL. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Tell me your craziest story. And they're like, I didn't really get called on shit. Then it's a hard book to write at that point.
Right. Yeah.
You've got to take
Buds Was Hard has been sold.
Yes, a million times. But yeah, exactly.
All right. So the second book, which just came out, your second book just came out, what, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, yeah. When Darkness Falls, He Doesn't Catch It. And that was the sequel to At Night She Cries. And simply because, look, At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed crushed. And there was an appetite for it. Had that not have done well, I would not have written this second book.
How long did it take you to write the second book?
This one was 45 days.
All right, but you obviously had been crafting this in your head prior to sitting down, or did you just sit
Correct.
down? Okay, so how long had you been thinking of it and conceptualizing it and all that stuff, writing notes? I'm sure.
So this was this one came out almost just about 3 years after the first one came out.
Wife was pregnant again.
Yes. Wife was pregnant again. And I will say this, it would have been earlier, but then I wrote Matt Best's book in between that.
Which I do want to touch on.
Of course. Yeah. And we can get to that. But this one would have came earlier, but just the timing of Matt's book and all that other stuff. I remember finishing Matt's. I got super drunk that night, took a day off, and then I woke up the next morning and started writing this. So they were back to back. I mean, literally by a day.
So you were like dialed into their whole writing thing, and you just basically piggybacked, so to speak. from Matt's book right into your next book?
Yeah, I'm always pretty dialed in. I write on average between 5 and 6 days a week, and I don't think that has changed for me in 17 years at this point. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So how many pages is When Darkness Falls, He Doesn't Catch It?
It came in around 300.
Okay. And are you proud of that book?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even funnier than like At Night She Cries While He Rides a Steed. And I know what people are probably saying, of like, dude, that book was fucking hilarious. There's no way you can top that one. Yes, I can, simply for the fact of I know what I'm doing now. Whereas the first book, whenever you're writing your first book, it is so much different than writing screenplays that it is a big adjustment, and you go through a lot of editing, and you're meeting with your agent and your editors more and all of that stuff, and you're still trying to figure out how to correctly make these character arcs work and why in a longer format. Because a screenplay for a film, for a standard comedy, usually comes in at about 105 pages. This is 3 times that. So
is it just more detailed, or
Yeah, more detailed. The character arcs and
what's a character arc?
Character arc is like, let's take Baker. We'll just take you as an example. Okay. If I'm writing a book about Baker, your character arc is where you were born to where you are now, and then all of that stuff in between.
Okay, it's like lifespan, so to speak.
Correct. Okay. And sometimes your lifespan in a book or a movie might only be a couple years or a couple months. But over that couple months or a couple years, your story arc has to be so good and it has to hook the audience in, that if it's not, nobody's going to read it, no matter what book it is. So even though like let's say your book takes place in the course of one day or a month, that 1 month or 1 day has got to be so fucking interesting that your readers are going to want to sit through 300 pages of that and make sure their character arc is great.
Okay, because I guess, so when you're like watching a movie or a TV show, you're taking in audio as well as visual stimulation, and you're looking at pictures that tell the story. So in a book, you're simply reading words on a page, so everything has to be, I guess, conveyed via typed word. So
yes.
Okay. So you have less tools to work with, so to speak.
Oh yeah. So like in a screenplay, let's say your kids are shooting hoops in the driveway. All you're writing in a screenplay is exterior driveway day, and then it's 2 kids are playing basketball in the driveway. You don't have to go into any further detail in that. Whereas
like
in a book,
what color shirts they're wearing or something.
What color shirts, the shoes, what the air's like, how hot it is. What the grass looks like, can the neighbors hear you? All of those little details add up, and they're interesting, and they add to the story, and they help the reader feel like they're in the environment that you're talking about.
That's actually really cool. I've never thought about that way, Ross. That's really interesting, man. That really is.
Yeah.
So you have to write all the details, as opposed to, on a TV show or movie, they can look at the details.
And one of my, I tell you what, one of my biggest learning curves was actually 2 directors who were actually fantastic writers who write screenplays like novels. And that was a big help to me back in the day, understanding how to potentially change from a screenwriter to a book author. And it was Quentin Tarantino. He had a script. Whenever Quentin Tarantino in Hollywood has a script that comes out, it gets leaked immediately. The assistants take the day off. Everybody essentially takes the day off to read Quentin Tarantino's scripts, because they're written like the best novel you will ever read in your life. Every single thing is detailed like a novel, the way that you would write a book, and it's amazing. You're so immersed in it that he's describing every single little detail, and music. He's putting music in there of like what's playing in the background. I remember reading Inglourious Bastards, that opening scene where the family's underneath the floorboards.
Yep.
Yeah. It was probably that opening scene in this in his screenplay.
Monsieur Lapetite.
Yes, was probably 18 pages, and which is way too long for an opening scene in a typical screenplay. But he's Quentin Tarantino, and he knows, like, you know what you're getting, and he's so famous that he can get away with writing that in a screenplay. That's when you sit down and read that, you're like, holy shit, I feel like I am underneath the floorboards. Please don't kill this family.
It's interesting that you say that, because as you're like, Quentin Tarantino movies, honestly, are my favorites. I absolutely love them. And listening to you say that, I kind of started thinking about Inglourious Bastards, The Hateful Eight, Django. And the details in those films seem to get a lot more attention than other details in other movies, you know.
And it's because they're written in the scripts like that. So he
that's
knows.
Trippy, man. That's really
the
cool,
actor
Ross.
knows. Yeah. So like with Quentin, and because I know a lot of people out there will shit on him, like Quentin Tarantino is not the best. He is. To me, he is the best, but it's for reasons that are different than a standard audience knows, where this fucking guy has all of these details that you're seeing in these movies already in his mind and on the page before they've even gotten to set. So it's not as if he's coming up with this on the fly, or, you know, he got lucky with some happy accident during filming where it started raining or it was snowing or whatever. No, that is all written into the thing, and then he'll into the script, and then he'll go out and find locations where there's that amount of snow, like for the Hateful Eight. You know, that's what he does. That's how detailed he is, and that's what makes him brilliant.
That's actually awesome as shit, Ross. I'm so glad we're doing this episode because I'm learning things.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Are you a better screenplay writer now because you've written 3 books?
No, I'm faster now.
Okay,
because
I guess so. Your skill set has improved, and you're faster, so it's made you better.
100%. So like, you know, writing a comedy for me, any comedic screenplay, like typically takes me anywhere from 15 to 21 days. You know, I can get that down to about 12 now for a movie. I mean, I'm super locked in for, you know, 9 hours a day, but it is a lot easier because you can skip all that. You don't have to go into those details. And in Hollywood, unless you are Quentin Tarantino, nobody's going to fucking read that shit.
Okay.
Like, more people in Hollywood are concerned with the dialogue. You can make up the locations and all that other stuff, you know, as you go. But everybody is concerned with the dialogue, simply for the reason is when you send out the script all over town, you're trying to attach big name talent. So let's say you go to Brad Pitt, for example, with a screenplay. If you turn in a fucking 300-page screenplay, that agent's not going to read it. Therefore, he's not going to give it to Brad. They just want to skip to the dialogue moments of like, all right, great. What character is Brad playing? It's this one. Awesome. Can I read this in under an hour? That's what the agent's thinking. And if he can't, then he's not going to give it to Brad. So you've got to make it as clean and tight and as perfectly polished and edited as you possibly can. Otherwise, that will never get to Brad Pitt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, you know, with writing all these books, with writing all these books, like I look at writing movies now as a joke. Like it's become super easy just because it's I'm faster and I know what I'm doing and I know which parts I can skip. Like
and
I know
it's almost like I know.
Do. Yeah, I know all the cheat codes, you know, to put it in video game speak at this point. But I will say this though, Baker, I find way more interest in writing books now than I do screenplays. Just because it is harder and it is a challenge to top the last one. So I enjoy writing books now more than I do writing scripts.
You're coming full circle, man. So let me ask you this before we kind of talk about the process of writing a book for someone else, and that other person is Matt Best. Where can people pick up your new book?
Well, I mean, obviously the controversy was pretty big that it got banned on Amazon. So that ban lasted. The Drinkin Bro community raged against the machine, and everybody who had pre-ordered it. It is now currently back on Amazon. Like it got put up this week. We had some lawyers get involved with them, and My guess, because every book is typically on pre-sale for about 90 days before it comes out.
Okay.
Somebody like Michelle Obama's is probably 6 or 7 months before, simply for the fact of she got a $13 million advance. That's a lot of money to recoup off a book. So, that 6 to 7 months is necessary. 90% of your sales come from Amazon. So I can't even say of book sales, all book sales, by the way, any book across the board. 90% come from Amazon. So it's not like I can go out and say boycott Amazon. That's not realistic. So instead, I got the lawyers involved. It's now up. The hardback, paperback, and Kindle is now up on Amazon. It's available at barnesandnoble.com, Books A Million, all that other shit. Same as, every single book on the planet. But I will say this, the Audible book is still being held up right now. And Amazon owns Audible.
So there's still some grief there with that.
Yeah, I'm still fighting with them over that because look, the sick money right now is in Audible books.
Oh wow.
With the takeoff of podcasts and the way that the podcasts have taken off, more people have gotten conditioned to listen to people talking in their car. So books on tape is massive now. It is a massive, big budget industry. And since Amazon bought Audible, they're allowing authors to upload it themselves. So instead of writing having Penguin or Simon and Schuster take your royalties, you get the royalties yourself, and there's no middleman involved anymore. Which is what awesome. I did with this one.
How long did that take? How long did it take you? How many hours, days, weeks, whatever, to actually record and produce the Audible book?
So to record the Audible book is about 8 days, and you're going probably 10 hours a day on that. Jeez. until your voice is out. With the first one, it was Simon and Schuster. So you record it in a sound studio, you send it off to their editors, they edit it, but the editing process takes about 6 to 8 weeks, because your audiobook, when it's done, is going to come out to about 6.5 hours.
Okay.
So you're looking at
I didn't know that either.
5 movies back to back. You're editing 5 movies back to back. I changed the game with the first one, At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed, simply for the fact of I had heard all of the Audible books. I had understood what big business it was, and it was all the same guy. So 85% of Audible books was that British guy who was like, oh, I haven't been with another woman since my wife died. And I was like, man, those are so fucking boring. And like, I personally couldn't get into it. So I was just like, all right, well, how do I switch this up? The first one, I hired a team of actors and we read it like a movie. So I treated it as if it was a table read for one of my movies. We recorded all these voices. I do over 100 impressions anyways, and the Audible crushed. It's to this day, it's one of the top 10 highest ranked Audibles on there.
That's badass, I
believe it's
man.
a 4 point.
Good for you.
Thanks, man. I think it's about a 4.8 out of 5. With this one, because of the new one, When Darkness Falls, He Doesn't Catch It. Everybody was demanding that I did the Audible this time because of how well the last one did, which I did. But I stepped up the game more because I knew there was going to be more heat, more controversy. So I got an Oscar winner to play Harriet Tubman in this new one. And I have 2 Emmy winners who are also voicing this with me. So in that team of actors, I've just gotten bigger with the talent involved because I know how many people are listening to Audible books now.
That's badass, man.
Yeah.
So that's another process. I mean, that's not something that's quick. That takes a little while. That's awesome.
Yeah. And if you're an author out there, start to factor that in too on your release date. Because, if you're a self-publishing author, you can pick out your release dates, but give yourself enough time in advance to record an Audible book, to find a team of actors. With the way they're doing it now, since Amazon bought Audible, it's a site called acx.com. And look, I have nothing to do with them. This is not a plug for them. This is simply the only place that you can do it and retain the most amount of rights. And so when you go there, hypothetical Baker writes a book tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. And you want somebody to do the Audible. You can put your book up on there, and then there's a bunch of voiceover actors, all of that shit. You can hire a producer to edit it, record it, all of that stuff. they're going to take a fee either out of the back end of your book or an upfront fee, but you're going to get the top end talent you can now, whereas that did not exist 3 years ago when I did At Night She Cries.
Got it. So, all right. Everyone knows where to buy your latest book on all the book places. So now let's kind of transition into you helping writing Matt's book. What was that like going from writing your own fiction, or maybe it's not fiction to you, maybe it is real, but transitioning from that into like war stories, Army Ranger, CIA contractor, like a world that you are not 100% familiar with, like you are Hollywood and the writing and the screenplays and stuff. Like, how was that process?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because with these first, these books, these first two, it's comedic fiction 100% across the board. This is no different than me writing screenplays. There is no real difference, except it's longer, obviously. And you got to go back and cross your T's and dot your I's as far as characters and all that other shit goes. But essentially, it's the same world where you're creating something from scratch. It's comedic fiction, no big deal. Switching to writing, helping write someone's biography about their life is a completely mind fuck of an experience where it all sounds fine when you first sign on and you're like, all right, awesome. Then it really sets in once, you find out there's interest for it and you start to sell it. And then you realize it's somebody's life and you don't want to fuck up their life. And again, look, me and Matt are best friends in real life. So with Matt's, I'm aware that is going out to, millions of people around the world. They are all strangers who don't know about Matt's life. I have to get it right. I have to get his life right because he's got one shot at this. You have one shot at a biography, and that's it. So the pressure
there's no do-overs.
Yeah, there's no do-overs, and the pressure I felt not wanting to fuck up somebody's life story, because again, it's not just about Matt. It's about his mom, his dad, his brothers. His entire life story. Evan, Jared, Rocco, everybody, that it's like, man, I've got to get this right, and it's got to be as accurate as possible. I had read a bunch of military books going into it to get prepared for it, and a lot of them seemed cold, very methodical, very surgical about I did this and I breached the door and I did this and this and this and this and this. And not that they weren't great, because they were, but there's so many military books out there. How do you break the mold of that? And how do you make it different and unique to make sure it's the same voice that is different and unique like Matt is in real life? At the time, Deadpool had just come out. And everybody had called me and said, hey, man, you got to go check out Deadpool. It's different than any of the superhero movies. I fucking hate superhero movies. I can't stand them.
Yeah, me too. But I love Deadpool.
Yeah, it's same. And so finally, after the millionth call from my buddies, they were like, go check out Deadpool. And when I saw it, it was hilarious. And but he was killing all of these people, throughout the movie. And it's like he was getting fucked up. He was killing all these people, all of this shit. And he was funny. And he reminded me of Matt in real life. So, when Matt and I got together and when I talked to my agent about this, I said, what if we just took a completely different, unique approach to writing a military book, and we wrote it in the style of Deadpool? So that way there's comedy and humor and levity all throughout it. And Matt was like, dude, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, this is my fucking dream. And I was like, awesome. Because the way Matt views his life is that, he's not a broken veteran who needs help or, help, woe is me, all of that stuff. Like, no, man, that guy has created companies and is extremely successful. And he's always found humor in it along the way. Even when he was going through the most fucked up shit of his life overseas, he always found humor in it. And in this book, when it does come out next year, and by the way, we just did get clearance from the DOD, maybe about 3 hours ago. So it will be coming out.
Awesome.
Probably. My guess would be by spring, just simply because we don't want to go up against Michelle Obama's book, because that'll be number one for probably about 2 months. when it comes out and people read it and read these crazy stories overseas, it's written with humor and light, and it's really, really, really fucking funny all the way through, even though there's some super dark shit in there.
Yeah, that's one of the things about these guys that I just love. Like, there's so many vets that were, Green Berets, CIA, Rangers, what have you, and they tend to trade on like the secret, top secret. I'll give you a hint, but I can't talk about it type stuff.
Right.
And one of the things I love about these guys is that like they don't do that. Like they focus and trade on the humor and the camaraderie and all the funny stuff that happened. And I respect the hell out of that. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. By the way, I think it's going to change. I think this book is going to change the game and going to change the approach that other people writing books about their experience in the military. It's going to change, man, because I think it's going to allow people to be themselves. Because I think this one will do really, really well, and then look at it and be like, oh, okay, maybe all those dark thoughts and feelings that I was thinking in my head that I was afraid to write down, now I can do that because of this book. Because Matt went for it on every single down where you were just like, Jesus Christ. It was 4th and 10 and he was going deep every single time. And you were like, man, that's dark, but it's really fucking funny, dude. Holy shit.
Right. No, that's awesome. And what was the process like going through the the DOD and stuff and all the redactions? I mean, that took what, 14 months?
15 months. And just to backtrack a second here, writing Matt's book took about 6 months simply for the fact of it was so detailed with, the firefights and things that he was in and the names and the places and all of that stuff, that took a lot longer than me just making something up, because those details to get right, like you cannot fuck up. Some of those people that were with him on those missions who had either lived or passed are going to read that book and it's got to be as accurate as possible. So that's why that one took a lot longer than everything else, because Matt didn't want to fuck up their story as well and their lives and who they were as people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's respectful.
Yeah, so that one took a long time, a lot longer to write because it was so detailed, and it was the two of us, and we were trading off. He was flying out here and staying with me for a month. I was flying out there and staying with him for a month, and back and forth. Then you turn it in. You finish the book. After 6 months, you feel great about it. Your agent feels great about it, and you're like, awesome, man. I'm going to send this in to the Department of Defense. And me personally, I thought, Matt was so famous in the military space that it would be like, no big deal. They'll clear that in like 2 weeks. It'll be awesome. We had to send it to the Department of Defense and the CIA. The CIA, to their credit, got us back notes in 30 days. They're redactions. So I shouldn't even say notes, because they don't give notes. They just give redactions. Some of the redactions they gave, I felt were ridiculous. But it is what it is. And they were easy enough that I probably spent 2 days fixing the redactions and it was done. But here's, what's crazy was like, you couldn't say the word CIA. So you had to say the agency. So it was like, dude, that got redacted and you had to change it to the agency. You couldn't say James Bond. I don't know why. I never got an answer. And like,
maybe he's real.
Like
maybe he's a real dude.
I mean, they took out and like I remember the line being something like, I felt like the shit that I was doing, like I was like some on some James Bond 007 shit over here, and they redacted that. Again,
unbelievable.
Yeah, I changed it, and it is what it is. And you're like, all right, great. But that was 30 days. The Department of Defense, we heard was going to be longer. I had a couple friends that had written military books. And they had gotten their redactions back, usually in 6 months. I knew the person that it went to. Matt sent a care package from Black Rifle Coffee to the person. I'm not going to say who it is. And then I had sent some flowers and said, hey, we appreciate this process or whatever. We knew everybody was excited for this book, and hopefully that was going to speed it up. We were sorely mistaken.
They were allergic to flowers and they hated coffee.
God, they must have, man. It was a bitch. And, I don't, there's some things in the book that, look, Matt doesn't take his life very seriously in a great way. But I don't think the military was necessarily amped that Matt was making light of situations that he was going through where, I don't think they necessarily want people who are enlisting to think about like, oh man, hey, it's fun to kill people. Like things like that. Like where, look, let's face it, man. Most of my friends who enlist want to kill people. That's why they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like you want to kill the bad guy. That's the deal. So like to say you're having fun doing it, I don't understand. And to me, that feels like what the pushback was. I'll know when I get these redactions in a couple weeks. But, to me, I don't think there's, and then again, this is just me personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody being good at their job and having fun doing it. Yes, is it killing people or blowing up places? It is, but that's what the job requires. So why not have fun doing it no matter what job you're doing in this world?
There's nothing wrong with liking what you do. Yeah. So,
at the end of this, I'll find out what the redactions are. Hopefully they're as minimal as the CIA's were. And my guesstimate is I would put this out probably around, my hope is probably end of February, beginning of March. Simply because, again, I know what the current state of the political climate is. And Michelle Obama's book is on pace to be number one for at least 8 weeks, I would say.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, Ross, I'd like to do another one of these in a week or so. I would like to talk about the acting and how you got into that and the Hollywood and if someone wants to become an actor, how to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this was very informative. I feel like I am now ready to win a Nobel laureate and I'm a writer.
Yeah,
now.
Look, and the last thing I'll tell the audience and for everybody at home listening is you have to write the book first, whatever it is. If you don't have an agent, don't think that you have to get an agent to write a book. That's not the case. Write the book first and then go after the agents. Also, the way that everything is set up now with the Amazons and all of this shit, the Ingram Sparks and the self-publishing, you can do this yourself for very, very, very cheap. And, on your first one, you don't necessarily need a huge publisher because a publisher is going to put money behind, like Ronda Rousey. I remember my first book came out at Simon & Schuster and Ronda Rousey's book came out the week after mine at the same fucking company. They gave all the marketing money to Ronda Rousey. I didn't get any of that marketing money. I did a very small book tour and that was it. But they pushed all the money to Ronda Rousey and it was just like they relied on the person to more and more on the author to promote their own book. So knowing that going into writing your own book, knowing you're going to have to promote it anyways, write it yourself. Worry about getting the agent and getting a big publisher and all that shit later. If the sales do well on its own, it'll get picked up by a massive publisher anyways. So don't let any of that prohibit you from sitting down and writing your book and telling your story, because that's probably the most important part. Don't think you have to get an agent and all that other bullshit first, because it's not true.
So there you have it, folks. So I'm Baker Leavitt. Ross Patterson, thanks for coming on, man. And also, Ross, where can they find you?
Social media at STJames. On that's Twitter, that's Instagram, and then Facebook is Ross Patterson. All blue checked, verified, so you know it's me. So you can just type in Ross Patterson because I'm verified because I'm sweet, Baker. And
there you go.
And then
famous as hell.
And then the books. At Night She Cries While He Rides His Steed, and When Darkness Falls He Doesn't Catch It. They're all available online at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com, and anywhere books are sold.
I'm Baker Leavitt. This is Ross Patterson, and you've been listening to Launch Code.
Thanks for having me, buddy.